wind howled through the gaps in the rotting wood, carrying with it the bitter bite of a Nevada winter night. In the corner of the abandoned barn, huddled against a pile of moldy hay, Evelyn Carter pressed her knees to her chest, trying desperately to preserve what little warmth remained in her trembling body. The rough straw scratched against her bare skin, but she was beyond caring about such minor discomforts. Survival was all that mattered now. Her breath came out in white puffs, dissipating quickly in the freezing air. The smell of old horse manure and decaying wood filled her nostrils, but even this wretched shelter was better than the open desert. Through a hole in the roof, she could see stars glittering coldly in the black sky, indifferent to her suffering. How had it come to this? Just 6 months ago, she'd been a respectable young woman in Philadelphia, working as a seamstress in her aunt's shop. Then came the letter about the opportunities in the West. Good wages for skilled workers, they said. A chance for a new life after her parents' deaths from consumption. She'd saved every penny for the journey, full of hope and determination. The memories rushed back unbidden, the stagecoach ride that seemed to last forever. The dusty mining town of Silver Creek, the boarding house that turned out to be nothing like advertised. The smooth-talking man who'd promised her work at a respectable establishment, only to reveal his true intentions once he had her money. The horrible realization that she'd been deceived, the locked room, the leering faces, and then, 2 nights ago, the desperate escape when they'd gotten careless during their drinking. She'd run blindly into the desert, preferring death in the wilderness to the fate they'd planned for her. They'd caught up quickly. She could still hear their drunken shouts, feel their rough hands grabbing at her clothes as she fought like a wildcat. Somehow, in the struggle, she'd broken free, but not before they'd torn away everything she wore. She'd kept running, naked and terrified, until she'd stumbled upon this barn. A coyote howled somewhere in the distance, and Evelyn shivered harder. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from the cold. Her feet had gone numb hours ago. She knew she couldn't survive another night like this. Maybe it would be better to just close her eyes and let the cold take her. At least then this nightmare would end. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart stop. They'd found her. After 2 days, they'd finally tracked her down. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, though she knew it was useless. There was nowhere to run, no strength left to fight. The horse stopped just outside. She heard the creak of leather as someone dismounted, then the sound of boots on frozen ground. Slow, measured steps, not the stumbling gait of a drunk, but the confident stride of a man who knew exactly where he was going. The barn door groaned as it swung open. Moonlight spilled in, along with a tall silhouette. The man paused in the doorway, and Evelyn could see he carried a lantern in one hand. He hadn't lit it yet. Perhaps his eyes were adjusting to the darkness. "Hello?" His voice was deep, cautious but not threatening. "Anyone there? Saw the door hanging open. Just checking on the place." Evelyn held her breath, praying he would leave, but her body betrayed her with a violent shiver that rustled the hay. The man's hand went to his hip, to a gun, she was sure. "I heard that. Come on out. I don't mean any harm, but I'll defend myself if I need to." What choice did she have? If she stayed hidden, he'd find her anyway. If she tried to run, she wouldn't make it 10 feet. Slowly, painfully, she uncurled from her hiding spot. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from cold and thirst. "Please don't." The man struck a match and lit his lantern. The sudden light made Evelyn squint, but she saw his eyes widen in shock as he took in her condition. He immediately averted his gaze, setting the lantern on the ground and shrugging off his heavy coat. Good Lord, ma'am, here. He held out the coat without looking at her directly. Take this. Evelyn stared at the offered garment, unable to process this unexpected kindness. Her fingers were so stiff she could barely grasp it. The man stepped forward carefully, still keeping his eyes averted, and draped the coat around her shoulders. It was still warm from his body heat and smelled of leather and tobacco. Thank you, she managed to whisper. Can you stand? He kept his voice gentle, like he was talking to a spooked horse. My place isn't far. You need food and a real fire before... He didn't finish the sentence, but she knew what he meant. Before the cold finished what it had started. I can't. I have no way to repay you. He didn't ask for payment. His tone was matter of fact. Can't leave you here to freeze. That's not how decent folks behave. Decent folks? When was the last time she'd encountered any of those? But what choice did she have? Die here in this barn, or take a chance on this stranger's kindness? She tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Her legs had no strength left. Without hesitation, the man scooped her up, coat and all, as if she weighed nothing. She tensed, expecting the worst, but his hold was careful, respectful. Easy now, he murmured. Just get you on my horse and we'll be at my place quick. Get you warm and fed. We can sort out the rest later. As he carried her outside, Evelyn caught a glimpse of his face in the moonlight. Weathered features, maybe 35 years old, with a serious expression and kind eyes. Not handsome in the classical sense, but there was something solid and reliable about him. He lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her, keeping one arm around her to hold her steady. The coat covered her adequately, but she was still aware of her vulnerable state. Name's Thomas McGraw, he said as he guided the horse away from the barn. Got a small ranch about 10 miles from Silver Creek. You're safe now, ma'am. Whatever trouble you're running from, it won't find you at my place tonight. Safe. The word seemed foreign after everything she'd been through. But as the horse moved steadily through the cold night, with this stranger's strong arm keeping her from falling, Evelyn allowed herself the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe. Just maybe. She'd survived the worst. The stars wheeled overhead as they rode in silence, leaving the abandoned barn and its shadows behind. The horse's steady gait carried them through the cold desert night, and Evelyn found herself drifting in and out of consciousness. Each time she started to slip sideways. Thomas McGraw's arm tightened around her, keeping her secure in the saddle. His coat was heavy and warm, smelling of wood smoke and honest work, so different from the cheap cologne and whiskey stench she'd grown to fear in Silver Creek. Stay with me, ma'am, Thomas said quietly when she shivered particularly hard. Not much further now. Through her exhaustion, Evelyn studied what she could see of him. His hands on the reins were calloused and scarred from years of ranch work, but they held the leather gently. He rode with the easy confidence of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. Everything about him spoke of competence and quiet strength. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why what? Why help me? You don't know me. I could be... She trailed off, unable to voice what those men had tried to make her. He could be in trouble, Thomas finished, could be running from something bad, could be half frozen and needing help. That's all I need to know right now. They rode in silence for a few more minutes before he spoke again. You got a name, ma'am? Don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Just seems proper to know what to call you. Evelyn, she whispered. Evelyn Carter. Miss Carter, then. You from around these parts. Philadelphia? The word brought tears to her eyes. How far away that life seemed now. A long way from home. His voice held no judgment, just observation. The West can be hard on folks. especially those not prepared for it. If only he knew how unprepared she'd been, how naive, how foolish to believe the promises in that letter. The ranch appeared gradually out of the darkness, first a fence line, then outbuildings, and finally a modest cabin with smoke rising from its chimney. It wasn't large or fancy, but it looked solid and well-maintained. A dog barked once, then came running to greet them, tail wagging. "That's Blue," Thomas said, "no more friend than watchdog. I'm afraid. Down, boy." He dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. Evelyn's legs buckled the moment they touched ground, and he caught her easily, lifting her again. "Let's get you inside and warm." The cabin's interior was simple but clean. One main room served as kitchen and living area, with 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. Thomas set her carefully in a chair by the fireplace and immediately added more wood to the flames. "I'll heat some water," he said, moving to the stove. "You need to get warm gradually. Too much heat too fast can be dangerous when you're this cold." He worked efficiently, filling a kettle and setting it to boil, then disappearing into one of the bedrooms. He returned with an armful of clothing and blankets. "These were my sisters," he explained, setting them on a nearby chair while still carefully avoiding looking directly at her. "She lived with me for a spell before she married and moved to California. Left some things behind. They should fit well enough." A sister. That explained why he had women's clothing available. Evelyn felt some of her tension ease. "There's a screen there." He gestured to the corner. "You can change when you're ready. He paused, seeming to realize she might not have the strength. "Can you manage, or do you need help?" The thought of undressing, even behind a screen with a strange man in the room, made her heart race. But her fingers were still too numb to work buttons or ties. "I'll step outside," Thomas said, reading her hesitation. "You take your time. When you're decent, call out and I'll come back in. There's water in the basin there for washing." He grabbed his rifle from beside the door. "I'll check on the livestock while you get sorted." After he left, Evelyn struggled out of his coat and managed to pull on the simple dress and undergarments he'd left. They were well made and clean, obviously cared for despite not being worn in some time. The dress was a bit loose, but it covered her properly. She wrapped one of the blankets around her shoulders and called out softly. Thomas returned a few minutes later, nodding approval when he saw she was dressed. "Better. Now, let's get some food in you. When's the last time you ate?" She tried to remember. 2 days, I think, maybe 3. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just moved to the stove and ladled out a bowl of what looked like stew from a pot. "This is from yesterday, but it's still good. Beef and vegetables. Eat slow. Your stomach won't handle too much at once." The first spoonful was heaven. Simple beef stew had never tasted so good. Thomas poured himself coffee and sat across from her, finally able to look at her now that she was clothed. "You don't have to tell me what happened," he said. "But if someone's looking for you, I need to know. I've got hands who work for me, neighbors who stop by. Need to know if there's danger coming." Evelyn set down her spoon, her appetite suddenly gone. "There might be. The men who... I escaped from them 2 nights ago. They might still be looking. From Silver Creek." She nodded. "Know their names?" "One was called Luke Dempsey. He runs a house there. Said he ran a boarding house for ladies, but it wasn't. It was..." She couldn't finish. Thomas's face darkened. "I know of Dempsey, and I know what kind of establishment he runs." He was quiet for a moment. "You escaped from there?" "They were drunk, careless. I ran, but they caught up. In the struggle, I managed to get away, but..." She gestured helplessly at herself. "And you've been hiding in that barn for 2 days." It wasn't a question. You're lucky to be alive, Miss Carter. Temperature's been dropping below freezing at night. I know. She met his eyes. I thought I was going to die there. Part of me thought it might be better than... Don't say that. His voice was firm but kind. You survived. You fought to live. That takes courage. Or foolishness. No. He leaned forward. What's foolish is men like Dempsey preying on innocent women. What's foolish is a world that lets them. You did what you had to do to survive. Nothing foolish about that. Tears spilled down her cheeks. After days of fear and desperation, his simple kindness was overwhelming. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure how to handle a crying woman. He pulled out a clean handkerchief and offered it to her. Now, Miss Carter, here's what we're going to do. You're going to finish that stew, then get some proper rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. You're safe here tonight. I've got good locks, a good rifle, and Blue might not be much of a guard dog, but he'll bark if anyone comes around. I can't impose on you. I have no money, no way to repay. Already told you I'm not looking for payment. My mother raised me to help folks in need. Can't rightly call myself a man if I turn away someone in trouble. But if Dempsey comes looking, then he'll find a rancher who doesn't take kindly to his type coming onto my property. Thomas's voice was steel. I've dealt with his kind before, don't you worry about that. He stood and moved to the bedroom door. You'll sleep in here. It was my sister's room. I'll bunk out here by the fire. Door's got a bolt on the inside if that makes you feel safer. Evelyn followed him to look into the room. It was small but clean, with a proper bed, a dresser, and curtains on the window. After 2 nights in a barn, it looked like paradise. Thank you, she whispered. I don't understand why you're being so kind, but thank you. Thomas paused in the doorway. My sister came out here to live with me because she was running from something too. Different trouble than yours, but trouble all the same. Someone helped her when she needed it most. Guess I'm just passing that on. He pointed to the dresser. More clothes in there. Help yourself to whatever you need. Get some rest. Miss Carter, things will look better in the morning. After he closed the door, Evelyn bolted it as he'd suggested, then sank onto the bed. It was soft and warm, with clean sheets that smelled of sunshine and sage. For the first time in days, she felt safe. Outside the door, she heard Thomas moving around, banking the fire, checking the locks, then a protector, not a threat. She'd forgotten such men existed. As exhaustion finally overtook her, Evelyn's last thought was a prayer of gratitude for the lonely rancher who'd given her shelter when no one else would. Sunlight streaming through the curtains woke Evelyn from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. For a moment, she lay still, disoriented by the comfort of a real bed and clean sheets. Then memory rushed back. The barn, the cold, the rancher who'd saved her life. She could hear movement outside her door, the clatter of dishes and the smell of coffee and bacon. Her stomach growled in response. Slowly, she sat up, taking stock of herself. Her feet were still tender. Her body ached, but she was alive and warm. The dress Thomas had given her was wrinkled from sleep. She found a brush on the dresser and tried to make herself presentable, then unbolted the door and stepped out cautiously. Thomas stood at the stove, his back to her. He'd changed clothes and looked freshly washed, his dark hair still damp. Blue lay by the fireplace, tail thumping when he saw her. "Morning," Thomas said without turning. "How are you feeling?" Better, much better, thank you." "Good. Breakfast is almost ready. Coffee's hot if you want some." She poured herself a cup, wrapping her hands around it gratefully. Through the window, she could see the ranch in daylight for the first time. The cabin sat beside a small stream, with a vegetable garden to one side and a barn and corrals beyond. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still white with snow. It was isolated but beautiful, a world away from the squalor of Silver Creek. "It's lovely here," she said softly. "It's home." Thomas plated eggs and bacon, setting them before her. "Been working this land for 8 years now. Started with nothing but a claim and determination. By yourself?" "I mostly have 2 hands who help with the cattle, but they live in town. Come out when I need them." He sat across from her with his own plate. "Suits me fine. I like the quiet." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Thomas spoke again. "Miss Carter, we need to discuss your situation. I'm not pushing you to leave. Want to be clear about that. But we need to think about what comes next." Evelyn set down her fork, anxiety returning. "I know, I don't know where to go. I can't go back to Philadelphia, and I spent everything I had getting here. What about family? My parents are dead. I have an aunt, but she made it clear when I left that I was on my own. Said a proper lady wouldn't go gallivanting off to the frontier." She laughed bitterly. "If she could see me now—" "The frontier's no place for judgment," Thomas said firmly. "People come here to start over, leave the past behind. Question is, what do you want to do now? I'm a seamstress by trade, a good one. I thought I could find work in a town, save money, maybe open my own shop someday." The dream seemed foolish now. "But Dempsey has my money, my belongings, everything. And if he's looking for me—" "He is." Thomas's tone was matter-of-fact. "Man like that doesn't like losing what he considers his property. He'll have men out looking, asking questions." Fear crept up her spine. "Then I should leave. I've put you in danger." "You'll do no such thing." His voice was calm but firm. "Running without a plan, without money or supplies, that's what got you in that barn. We're going to be smarter about this." "We? You need help. I'm offering it. Simple as that." He refilled his coffee cup. "Now, I was thinking, my sister left more than just clothes. She had a sewing kit, materials, even some patterns. You're welcome to use them. Folks around here always need mending done, clothes made. Mrs. Patterson at the general store. She mentioned just last week she wished there was a seamstress closer than Carson City. You're suggesting I stay here and work? I'm suggesting you stay here until you're back on your feet. You can help with the household chores, do some sewing for the neighbors, save up money. When you're ready, if you want to move on, you'll have the means to do it proper." "And if Dempsey comes here?" Thomas's eyes hardened. "Then he'll learn this ranch is under my protection, and I protect what's mine." The phrase, "what's mine," sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. "I'm not yours, Mr. McGraw. That's not what I meant." A slight flush colored his weathered cheeks. "I meant my land, my responsibility. Then you're under my roof, so you're under my protection. That's all." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply." Now she was blushing too. "I just don't want you to think I'm the kind of woman who—" "I don't think anything except that you're a woman who's had a run of bad luck and needs help getting back on her feet. Nothing more, nothing less." Blue chose that moment to amble over and rest his head on Evelyn's knee, looking up with soulful eyes. She scratched behind his ears, grateful for the distraction. "I should warn you," Thomas continued. "People will talk. Single woman staying at a bachelor's ranch. This isn't the city where folks mind their own business. Let them talk. After what I've been through, gossip seems a small thing. Fair enough, but we'll set it up proper. You're my housekeeper and seamstress, working for room and board plus a small wage. That gives you a respectable position and reason for being here." You'd pay me wages? Of course. Fair work deserves fair pay. Won't be much, ranch doesn't make a fortune, but it'll be honest money. Tears pricked her eyes again. Why are you so kind? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Already told you, it's what decent folks do. After breakfast, he showed her around the property. The vegetable garden was dormant for winter but well planned. The barn housed several horses and milk cows. Chickens pecked in their pen. Everything was neat and orderly. Speaking of a man who took pride in what he'd built, "It's not fancy," he said almost apologetically. "But it's all paid for. No debts, no liens. Built it all myself, board by board. It's wonderful." She meant it. After the false promises and squalor of Silver Creek, this simple, honest ranch felt like paradise. In the afternoon, Thomas brought out his sister's sewing supplies. Evelyn's hands trembled as she touched the familiar tools: scissors, needles, thread in various colors, even a small measuring tape. There were several lengths of fabric, some patterns, and a half-finished quilt. Sarah was always starting projects, Thomas said with a fond smile. Never could sit still. You should have seen this place when she lived here. Curtains on everything, tablecloths, doilies everywhere. I took most of them down after she left. Too fussy for a bachelor. Would you like me to finish her quilt? If you've a mind to, shame to let it go to waste. As Evelyn sorted through the supplies, planning what she could make, Thomas watched her with an unreadable expression. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, you look different. More yourself, I guess. Last night you looked like a ghost. Now you look like a person with purpose. I feel more like myself, for the first time since..." She trailed off, not wanting to darken the moment. Good. That's good." He stood abruptly. "I've got work to tend to. You get settled. Do whatever needs doing in here. I'll be back for supper." After he left, Evelyn sat at the table with the sewing supplies spread before her. Through the window, she could see Thomas in the corral, working with a young horse. He moved with patient confidence, never forcing, just guiding. The horse, skittish at first, gradually calmed under his steady hands. She thought about her situation. By all rights, she should be terrified. She was dependent on the goodwill of a stranger, hiding from dangerous men, with no money and no way home. But sitting in this warm cabin, with honest work before her and a good man's protection around her, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. She picked up needle and thread and began to work. The familiar motion soothed her rattled nerves. As she sewed, she found herself humming softly, an old hymn her mother used to sing. Blue settled at her feet, and the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, turning the simple room golden. When Thomas returned at dusk, she had mended 3 of his shirts and started on a dress from the fabric store. "For Mrs. Patterson," she explained. "If she likes my work, she might recommend me to others." Smart thinking. He washed up at the basin, then started preparing supper. They worked in comfortable silence, him cooking while she continued sewing. This could work, Evelyn thought. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't the adventure she dreamed of when she left Philadelphia. But it was honest and safe and good. For now, that was enough. That night, as she lay in bed listening to Thomas moving quietly in the main room, she allowed herself to truly believe she might survive this after all. She had shelter, work, and the protection of a good man who asked nothing from her but honest labor. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Dempsey was still out there, still searching. The townspeople would gossip. Winter was coming on hard. But tonight, she was safe and warm and no longer alone. Sometimes, she thought as sleep claimed her, salvation came in unexpected forms. Sometimes it looked like a weathered rancher with kind eyes and calloused hands, offering shelter to a stranger on a cold Nevada night. The first whispers started 2 weeks after Evelyn's arrival at the McGraw Ranch. Thomas had warned her it would happen, but she hadn't expected the hostility that came with the gossip. It began at Patterson's general store. Mrs. Patterson, a stout woman with sharp eyes and sharper tongue, examined the dress Evelyn had made with grudging approval. "Fine work," she admitted, running her fingers over the even stitches. "Though I wonder what other work you're doing out at the McGraw place." Evelyn kept her expression neutral. "Housekeeping and sewing, ma'am. Mr. McGraw has been very proper." Mrs. Patterson's look said she wasn't convinced. "Well, my daughter-in-law might need a dress made. I'll send word if she does." As Evelyn left the store, she nearly collided with 2 women on the boardwalk. They looked her up and down with undisguised contempt before sweeping past, whispering behind their hands. Thomas was loading supplies into the wagon. He took one look at her face and frowned. "Trouble?" "Just gossip. I expected it." "Doesn't make it right." He helped her onto the wagon seat with careful courtesy. "Mrs. Patterson take the dress?" "Yes, she might have more work for me." "Hey, good. Don't let the talk bother you. These folks have little excitement in their lives. New face gives them something to jaw about." But the talk did bother her, more than she wanted to admit. After the nightmare of Silver Creek, she craved respectability like a drowning person craved air. Still, she held her head high as they drove through town, ignoring the stares and whispers. They were almost back to the ranch when they saw the smoke. "That's coming from my place." Thomas's voice was tight. He urged the horses faster. They crested the hill to find the barn ablaze. Flames licked at the wooden structure, and the horses inside were screaming in terror. Thomas jumped from the wagon before it fully stopped. "Get buckets from the house," he shouted, already running for the barn doors. Evelyn raced to comply, her heart pounding. She filled buckets at the stream, running back and forth while Thomas led terrified horses from the burning building. Blue barked frantically, darting between them. Together they formed a bucket brigade, but it was hopeless. The fire had too much of a head start. Thomas managed to save all the horses and most of the tack, but the barn itself was lost. They could only watch as it collapsed in a shower of sparks and flames. Thomas stood silent, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. Soot and sweat streaked his skin, and a burn marked his left hand where he'd grabbed a hot metal latch. "Let me see," Evelyn said, reaching for his injured hand. He pulled away. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing. Come inside. That needs tending." In the cabin, she cleaned and bandaged the burn while Thomas sat unnaturally still. His jaw was clenched, whether from pain or anger she couldn't tell. "This wasn't an accident," he said finally. "How do you know?" "He could smell kerosene when I went in. Someone set this deliberately." Ice formed in Evelyn's stomach. "Dempsey." "Maybe. Or maybe someone who doesn't like you being here." He flexed his bandaged hand. "Either way, message is clear. They want you gone." "Then I should go. This is my fault. This is the fault of whoever struck that match." His voice was hard. "Nobody drives me off my own land or tells me who I can have under my roof. But your barn can be rebuilt. Horses are safe. That's what matters." He met her eyes. "Are you scared?" "Yes," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you alert, but don't let it make your decisions for you." He stood, reaching for his rifle. "I'm going to have a look around, see if our fire starter left any trace. You stay inside. Keep the door locked." After he left, Evelyn tried to focus on her sewing, but her hands shook too badly. Someone had burned Thomas's barn because of her. What would they do next? Burn the house? Hurt Thomas? She was so lost in worried thoughts that the knock on the door made her jump. It wasn't Thomas's knock. He had a particular rhythm. This was louder, more demanding. "Open up, sheriff's business." Evelyn peered through the window. A man with a sheriff's badge stood on the porch, but something about him set her nerves on edge. His clothes were too fine, his gun too fancy for a lawman's salary. "Mr. McGraw isn't here," she called through the door. "It's you I want to talk to, miss, about the fire." "I don't know anything about it." "Well now, that's interesting, 'cause I heard tell you might have started it yourself. Revenge against McGraw for keeping you here against your will." "That's absurd. Mr. McGraw saved my life." "So you say. But Luke Dempsey tells a different story. Says you're a thief who robbed him and set fire to his place before you ran. Says McGraw's harboring a criminal." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Of course Dempsey would twist the truth, make her the villain. And this sheriff, with his oily voice and expensive clothes, was clearly in Dempsey's pocket. "I've committed no crime," she said firmly. "Then you won't mind coming with me to sort this out? Open the door, miss." "No. I can break it down. Rather not damage McGraw's property more than necessary, but I will if I have to." Evelyn backed away from the door, looking frantically for a weapon. Thomas's spare rifle was by the fireplace, but she didn't know how to use it. The door shook as the sheriff threw his weight against it. The lock held, but it wouldn't for long. Then she heard Blue barking, followed by Thomas's voice. "Step away from my door, Sheriff Brennan." "McGraw, just trying to question your guest about some crimes in town." "What crimes would those be?" "Theft, arson, Dempsey's filed charges." "Has he now? And what proof does he have?" "Her presence here is proof enough. Woman like that doesn't end up at a decent man's ranch without running from something." "Careful, Sheriff." Thomas's voice was dangerously quiet. "You're talking about a lady under my protection." "Your fancy woman, you mean?" The sound of a rifle being cocked was unmistakable. "I said careful. Now, you've delivered your message. Time to leave." "Are you threatening a lawman, McGraw?" "I'm telling a corrupt excuse for a sheriff to get off my land." "You want to arrest someone. You come back with real evidence and a proper warrant. Until then, you're trespassing." There was a tense silence. Then Evelyn heard boots on the porch moving away. "This isn't over, McGraw," Sheriff Brennan called. "Dempsey wants his property back, and he usually gets what he wants. Miss Carter isn't anybody's property. And you tell Dempsey if he sets foot on my land, I'll put a bullet in him. Badge or no badge." Evelyn unlocked the door as the sheriff rode away. Thomas stood on the porch, rifle in hand, watching until the man was out of sight. "Pack your things," he said without looking at her. Her heart sank. "You're sending me away?" "What? No." He turned, seeming surprised. "We're both leaving. Tonight. I know a place we can stay until this blows over. Old line shack up in the hills. Nobody knows about it but me. But your ranch. We'll be here when we get back. I'll send word to my hands to watch over things." He stepped inside, already planning. "Take whatever sewing you can carry. We might be gone a week or two. I need to think how to handle this." "Thomas, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm deciding." He paused in gathering supplies to look at her. "Evelyn, I knew Dempsey might come after you. I made my choice when I brought you here. I don't abandon people who need help, and I don't bow to bullies with or without badges." "Why?" The question she'd been wanting to ask for weeks burst out. "Why do all this for me? You barely know me." He was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. "My sister Sarah came here running from a husband who beat her. She was scared, hurt, had nothing but bruises and the clothes on her back. Sound familiar? I couldn't protect her then. I was away on a cattle drive when he caught up to her. By the time I got back, he'd dragged her home. Took me and 3 other men to get her away from him for good. He met her eyes. I couldn't protect her then, but I can protect you now. That's reason enough. As they packed quickly, Evelyn felt a shift in her perception of Thomas McGraw. He wasn't just a kind rancher who'd helped a stranger. He was a man shaped by his own failures and losses, trying to make amends in the only way he knew how. The sun was setting as they loaded the wagon. The ruins of the barn still smoldered, a black scar on the landscape. But Thomas didn't look back as they drove away, and neither did Evelyn. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The line shack sat nestled in a grove of pines barely visible from the narrow trail. Thomas had been right. No one would find them here without knowing exactly where to look. The small cabin was stocked with basic supplies, proof that he used it regularly during cattle roundups. They'd been there 3 days when the first sign of trouble appeared. Evelyn was gathering water from the stream when Blue started growling, his hackles raised. Thomas appeared instantly from the cabin, rifle in hand. "Get inside," he said quietly. She obeyed without question, her heart racing. Through the window, she watched him scan the tree line, every muscle tense. Long minutes passed before he finally relaxed. "False alarm," he said, coming back in. "Just a mountain cat passing through, but it's good to stay alert." That night, as they sat by the small fire, Evelyn worked on mending while Thomas cleaned his rifle. The domesticity of it struck her. How natural it felt to share these quiet evening hours with him. "Tell me about Sarah," she said suddenly, "if you don't mind." Thomas's hands stilled on the rifle. "What do you want to know? What happened to her husband? You said it took 3 men to get her away." 4, counting me. His voice was distant, remembering. James Hartley was his name, owned a big spread near Sacramento. Everybody thought he was a fine, upstanding man. Nobody knew what he was like behind closed doors. He resumed cleaning the rifle with deliberate movements. Sarah hit it well at first, made excuses for the bruises. But after she lost the baby because of his beatings, she couldn't pretend anymore. Evelyn's needle paused. "She lost a child?" He pushed her down the stairs in a rage. "Doctor said the fall killed the baby and nearly killed her too." Thomas's jaw clenched. "That's when she finally wrote to me. I was in Texas on a cattle drive. Took me 2 months to get back. And Hartley had taken her home by then. Dragged her back like property. Said a wife belonged with her husband. And the law agreed." He set the rifle aside. "But I didn't care about the law. I gathered some men who felt the same. Good men who'd seen too many women hurt by bad husbands. We rode to Hartley's place at night." "Was there fighting?" "Some. Hartley had hired guns, but we had surprise on our side. And rage. The kind of rage that comes from seeing your little sister with finger marks around her throat." His hands clenched unconsciously. "We got her out. Hartley tried to follow, tried to use the law, but my friends convinced him to let her go. Made it clear what would happen if he didn't." "Where is she now?" "California. Married a good man, has 3 children. Writes me letters full of happiness." A rare smile crossed his face. "Named her oldest boy Thomas. Says he's stubborn as a mule, just like his uncle." Evelyn smiled too. "She sounds wonderful." She is. You'd like her. She's got spirit like you." Their eyes met across the fire, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition. Then Thomas looked away, suddenly busy with storing his rifle. 2 mornings later, Evelyn woke to find Thomas already gone. This wasn't unusual. He often checked the perimeter at dawn, but something felt different. Blue was gone too, which was odd. She dressed quickly and stepped outside. The morning was crisp and clear, with frost glittering on the grass. No sign of Thomas or the dog. Then she heard it, horses approaching, multiple horses moving fast. Evelyn ran back inside, barring the door and grabbing the rifle Thomas had taught her to use. Her hands shook as she checked that it was loaded. "Pretty sure she's in there," a voice called out. Not Thomas. Not anyone she recognized. "Dempsey wants her alive," another voice answered. "Remember that damaged goods don't bring good money." Money. They were talking about her like cargo. Rage steadied her hands on the rifle. "Come on out, girl," the first voice called. "We know McGraw's gone. Saw him heading down the mountain an hour ago. You're all alone." Where was Thomas? Had they hurt him? Captured him? The thought made her sick. "We can do this easy or hard," the voice continued, "but either way, you're coming with us." Evelyn aimed the rifle at the door. She might only get one shot, but she'd make it count. The door exploded inward with a crash. A man filled the doorway, grinning at the sight of her with the rifle. "Now, little lady, you don't want to—" She pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked hard against her shoulder, and the man spun away with a cry, clutching his arm. She shot me. The witch shot me." Evelyn was already reloading, Thomas's lessons clear in her mind. But before she could aim again, another man rushed in from the side window she hadn't seen was open. She swung the rifle like a club, catching him in the stomach. He doubled over, but a third man was already behind him. This one was smarter, more careful. He feinted left, then dove right when she swung at him. His fist caught her temple, sending her sprawling. The rifle flew from her hands. She tried to crawl toward it, but rough hands grabbed her arms, hauling her upright. "Feisty one," the man said, his breath foul against her face. "Dempsey said you were a fighter. Let her go." The voice came from the doorway. Thomas stood there, blood running from a cut on his forehead, but very much alive and very angry. Blue crouched beside him, teeth bared. "McGraw, thought we'd lost you in that ravine. Takes more than 3 hired thugs to stop me." Thomas's gun was steady. "I said let her go." "3 of us, 1 of you," the man holding Evelyn said. "And I've got my gun to her pretty head." Evelyn felt the cold metal press against her temple. Thomas's eyes never wavered. "You shoot her, you lose your payday," Thomas said calmly. "And I kill all 3 of you before her body hits the floor. Or you let her go. Take your wounded friend and ride away. Your choice. You're bluffing. Try me?" The silence stretched taut. Evelyn could hear her captor's nervous breathing, feel the tremor in the hand holding the gun. These weren't hardened killers. They were bullies used to easy prey. "Come on, Cleet." The wounded man groaned from outside. "I'm bleeding bad. She ain't worth dying for." "Dempsey will have our hides. Better than McGraw having our lives," the third man said. "Let's go." Slowly, reluctantly. Cleet released Evelyn. She stumbled forward and Thomas pulled her behind him without taking his eyes off the men. "Get out," he said. "Don't tell Dempsey if he sends anyone else. I'll come for him personally. No, and I won't come alone." The men retreated, helping their wounded companion onto his horse. Thomas kept his gun trained on them until the sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance. Only then did he turn to Evelyn, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, but you are." She touched the blood on his forehead. "They ambushed me on the trail. Thought they'd knocked me out. But I've got a harder head than they figured." He cupped her face, thumb brushing over the bruise forming on her temple. "You shot one of them." "I missed his heart." "Good enough to slow him down." Pride flickered in his eyes. "You did well." "I was terrified." "So was I. When I realized they were coming here, that you were alone." He pulled her against him suddenly, holding her tight. I thought I'd failed again. Like with Sarah. Evelyn wrapped her arms around him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. You didn't fail. You came back. They stood that way for a long moment, clinging to each other as the adrenaline faded. When Thomas finally pulled back, something had changed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, replaced by something deeper. We can't stay here, he said. They'll be back with more men. Where can we go? I've been thinking about that. He moved to gather their supplies, all business again. There's a federal marshal in Carson City, a real lawman, not like Brennan. If we can get to him, present your side of the story, he might be able to help. And if he can't or won't, Thomas met her eyes. Then we keep running, far as we need to go. California, Oregon, maybe even Canada. I won't let Dempsey have you. Evelyn, not while I'm breathing. As they packed quickly, Evelyn realized with startling clarity that she believed him. This man, who owed her nothing, would give up everything to keep her safe. The knowledge was both humbling and terrifying, because she was beginning to understand that she'd do the same for him. The snow started falling as they descended from the mountains, fat flakes that quickly covered their tracks. Thomas saw it as a blessing. It would make them harder to follow. But Evelyn shivered in the wagon seat beside him, and he wished they were already safe at his ranch. They'd been traveling for 2 days, avoiding main roads and towns. The meeting with the federal marshal in Carson City had gone better than expected. Marshal Wade Turner was a former cavalry officer, straight-backed and honest, with no love for men like Dempsey. I know about Luke Dempsey's operations, Turner had said after hearing Evelyn's story. Been trying to get evidence against him for months. Your testimony could be what we need. But testifying meant staying visible, meant Dempsey would know exactly where to find her. Thomas had seen the fear in Evelyn's eyes and made a decision. We're going back to my ranch, he'd told Turner. You need her for a trial. You know where to find us. But I'm done letting her run scared. Now, as they approached the familiar territory of his land, Thomas felt both relief and apprehension. Going home meant making a stand. It meant no more running. Thomas, Evelyn's voice was tight. Look! Ahead, where the road curved toward his property. Riders waited, 5 of them, positioned to block the path. Thomas recognized Sheriff Brennan's gaudy vest even from a distance. Hold on, he told Evelyn, then urged the horses into the trees off the main road. They'd barely made cover when gunfire erupted. Bullets whined overhead, shredding leaves and bark. The wagon horses screamed and bolted deeper into the woods. Thomas fought to control them while Evelyn held on, her knuckles white on the seat. More shots followed, but they were firing blind now. When I stop, run for that big oak, Thomas shouted over the noise. Stay low! He hauled on the reins, bringing the panicked horses to a sliding halt. Evelyn didn't hesitate, diving from the wagon and sprinting for cover. Thomas grabbed his rifle and ammunition, then followed. They crouched behind the massive tree trunk as more bullets struck around them. McGraw, Brennan's voice carried through the trees. No point in this. Send the woman out and you can go free. Go to hell, Brennan, Thomas called back. Movement to their left caught his eye. 2 men creeping through the underbrush, trying to flank them. Thomas aimed carefully and fired. 1 man cried out and fell. The other dove for cover. You're outnumbered, Brennan shouted. Be sensible. Evelyn tugged at Thomas's sleeve, pointing right. More men approaching from that direction. They were being surrounded. Thomas handed her his pistol. You remember what I taught you? She nodded, checking the cylinder with steady hands. The terrified woman he'd found in the barn was gone. In her place was someone who'd found her courage, her will to fight. "When I start shooting, you watch our right," he said. "No, don't waste bullets, then make each one count." "Thomas," she caught his arm. "If something happens, nothing's happening to either of us." He squeezed her hand briefly. "To trust me." Then he rose slightly, rifle ready, and opened fire on the men advancing from the left. Evelyn did the same on the right, the pistol barking in her hands. For several minutes, the forest erupted in gunfire. Thomas's military precision and Evelyn's surprising accuracy kept their attackers at bay, but ammunition wouldn't last forever. Then, through the chaos came a sound that made Thomas's heart leap. Horses, many of them, approaching fast from the direction of his ranch. "That's far enough, Brennan!" The new voice belonged to Sam Rodriguez, Thomas's foreman. Thomas risked a look and saw at least 8 riders, all armed, spreading through the trees. His neighbors, his friends, men he'd helped over the years. They'd come. "This is none of your business, Rodriguez," Brennan snarled. "A man attacks our neighbor. It becomes our business." Another voice called, William Patterson, the store owner's husband. "Besides, Marshal Turner sent word about you. Brennan said to make sure nothing happened to McGraw or Miss Carter before he arrived." "Turner's got no jurisdiction here." "A federal marshal's got jurisdiction everywhere," Sam replied. "Especially when it comes to corruption and attempted murder. Now drop your weapons, all of you." For a moment, the forest held its breath. Then came the sound of guns hitting the ground. Thomas stood slowly, keeping Evelyn behind him. His neighbors had Brennan and his remaining men surrounded, rifles trained on them from all angles. "Tie them up," Sam ordered. "Marshall should be here within the hour." As the men complied, Thomas felt Evelyn sag against him. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her steady. "It's over," he said quietly. "Is it?" She looked up at him. "What about Dempsey?" "Marshal Turner's arresting him today. If all went according to plan with your testimony and the evidence of Brennan's corruption, Dempsey's finished." William Patterson approached, tipping his hat to Evelyn. "Ma'am, my wife wanted me to tell you she's sorry for how she acted before. She didn't know the truth of things." "Thank you, Mr. Patterson." He cleared his throat. "Also said to tell you she's got 3 more dresses need making, whenever you're ready." Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. "I'll be happy to help." As Patterson moved away, Sam rode up, grinning. "Boss, you sure know how to stir up excitement. Can't leave you alone for a week without someone trying to shoot you. Appreciate you coming, Sam. Like I'd let someone hurt the man who pulled my family out of that flooded arroyo last spring." Sam's expression grew serious. "We protect our own out here. Both of you are our own now." The ride back to the ranch was surreal. Their neighbors formed a protective escort, alert for any remaining threat. But the only danger they encountered was from the weather. The snow was falling harder now, beginning to blanket the ground. When they finally reached the ranch, Evelyn gasped. Where the burned barn had stood, a new structure was rising. Fresh lumber formed the frame, and stacks of materials waited nearby. "We started rebuilding soon as we heard you were coming back," Sam explained. "Figured you'd need it for the horses." Thomas had to clear his throat before speaking. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say nothing. Just be ready to help when one of us needs it." Inside the cabin, while Thomas dealt with the marshal and the prisoners, Evelyn stood at the window watching. Her reflection stared back, thin but no longer gaunt, weathered but no longer broken. She'd survived. More than that, she'd found strength she never knew she possessed. "Evelyn?" She turned to find Thomas in the doorway, looking exhausted but relieved. "Turner's taken Brennan and the others. Says Dempsey was arrested this morning trying to flee town. It's really over?" She crossed to him, studying his face. What happens now? Now, he took her hands in his. Now you're free. You can go anywhere, do anything. Back to Philadelphia if you want. California. Anywhere. What if I don't want to go anywhere? His hands tightened on hers. Then you stay as my housekeeper, as my seamstress, as my... He paused, struggling for words. As your what, Thomas? Instead of answering, he pulled her close and kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, then deeper as she responded. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. As my wife, if you'll have me, he finished. I know it's sudden and you've been through so much that if you need time... Thomas McGraw. She placed a finger on his lips. I've been shot at, chased, nearly frozen to death, and fought off armed men. I think I've had enough time to know what I want. And what's that? A life here with you. A real life, not running or hiding, just living. She smiled, the expression transforming her face. If you'll have me? Or have you? He laughed, the sound rich and warm. Evelyn Carter, I'd face down a dozen Dempseys to have you. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the scars of recent battles. But inside the cabin, warmed by the fire and by newfound love, two souls who'd found each other in the darkest of circumstances began to plan their future. The confrontation was over. The real life, the good life, was just beginning. The courthouse in Carson City was packed to capacity. Word of Luke Dempsey's trial had spread throughout Nevada, drawing crowds eager to see the notorious saloon owner finally face justice. Evelyn sat in the witness chair, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though her heart raced beneath her composed exterior. State your name for the record, the prosecutor instructed. Evelyn Carter. Miss Carter, please tell the court how you came to be in Silver Creek. Evelyn took a breath, feeling Thomas's supportive presence in the gallery behind her. He'd wanted to sit closer, but witnesses weren't allowed companionship during testimony. I came west from Philadelphia after my parents died. I'd heard there was work for seamstresses in the mining towns. I had a letter promising employment at a respectable boarding house. And what did you find when you arrived? The boarding house was not what was advertised. Mr. Dempsey met me at the stage, said there'd been a misunderstanding about the nature of the work. She kept her voice steady as she recounted the deception, the locked room, the horrible realization of what Dempsey intended. The courtroom was silent except for her words and the scratch of the court reporter's pen. How did you escape? The men guarding me got careless one night. Drinking heavily, I managed to slip out, but they caught up quickly. In the struggle, my clothes were torn away. I ran into the desert with nothing. Objection, Dempsey's lawyer rose. The witness is clearly fabricating. I have the sworn testimony of two of Dempsey's own men corroborating her account. The prosecutor interrupted. Men who've agreed to testify in exchange for leniency. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. Continue, Miss Carter. I found shelter in an abandoned barn. That's where Mr. McGraw found me, near frozen to death. He saved my life. And what happened after Mr. McGraw took you in? Evelyn detailed the harassment, the burned barn, the attempts to kidnap her. With each word, she saw Dempsey's face grow darker, his expensive lawyer's confidence wavering. Miss Carter, the defense attorney began his cross-examination. Isn't it true you went to Mr. Dempsey's establishment willingly? I went to what I believed was a boarding house, yes. And isn't it true you owe Mr. Dempsey money for room and board? I owe him nothing, her voice hardened. He stole my money and tried to force me into a life no decent woman would choose. Yet you chose to live with Thomas McGraw, unmarried. As his housekeeper, Evelyn interrupted. With wages and respectability. There's a significant difference between employment and slavery, sir. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The lawyer tried several more angles, but Evelyn held firm, her answers clear and consistent. Then came the moment she dreaded. "Miss Carter, you claim to have witnessed something the night you escaped. Please tell the court what you saw." Evelyn's eyes found Dempsey. He stared back, his gaze promising retribution if she spoke. But Thomas was here. Marshall Turner was here. She was no longer alone and defenseless. "I saw Mr. Dempsey kill a man, a miner named Jacob Hollowell. They were arguing about money Hollowell claimed Dempsey had cheated him out of. Dempsey shot him in the back room of the saloon." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "That's a lie," Dempsey shouted, half rising from his chair before his lawyer pulled him down. "I saw you drag the body out," Evelyn continued, her voice carrying over the noise. "Heard you tell your men to dump it in the desert, make it look like robbery." "Do you have any proof of this accusation?" the defense lawyer demanded when order was restored. "Check the floorboards in Dempsey's back room," Marshall Turner called from his seat. "We did yesterday. Found bloodstains soaked deep into the wood, and we found Hollowell's body right where Miss Carter said it would be, with a bullet that matches Dempsey's gun." The trial continued for 3 more days, with witness after witness testifying to Dempsey's crimes. Former employees spoke of his brutality. Other women, emboldened by Evelyn's courage, told their own stories of deception and captivity. The 2 men who'd agreed to testify confirmed everything, hoping for mercy. On the final day, the jury deliberated for less than an hour. And guilty on all charges, Evelyn sagged with relief as the judge pronounced sentence: 25 years hard labor for murder, additional time for the other crimes. Dempsey was led away in chains. His empire crumbled, his threats finally silenced. Outside the courthouse, Thomas waited with a buggy. He helped her in without a word, understanding she needed silence to process what had just happened. They drove out of the city, into the clear desert air, before he finally spoke. "You were magnificent in there." "I was terrified." "Couldn't tell. You looked like an avenging angel speaking truth to power." She leaned against his shoulder. "It's strange. For months, I was afraid of him finding me. Now he's gone, and I don't know what to do with all that fear." "Let it go," Thomas suggested, "like releasing a bird from a cage. It served its purpose, keeping you alert and alive, but you don't need it anymore." They drove in comfortable silence until the ranch came into view. The new barn stood complete, painted red against the winter sky. Smoke rose from the cabin chimney, welcoming them home. "Evelyn," Thomas said as he helped her from the buggy, "now that this is over, now that you're truly free, my offer stands. But I understand if you need time to figure out what you want." She looked at him, this good man who'd risked everything for her, who'd stood by her without question or condition. The choice that had seemed so complicated suddenly became crystal clear. "I know what I want, Thomas. I've known for weeks. And I want Sunday dinners and mended shirts. I want to watch the sunrise over your mountains and know I'm home. I want to build a life with you, have children who'll run through these fields." She touched his face. "I want you. If you'll still have me." His answer was to sweep her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed, the sound bright and free in the clear air. "Is that a yes?" she asked when he set her down. "That's a yes to everything, marriage, children, Sunday dinners, all of it." He grew serious. "But I want you to be sure. You've been through so much, which is exactly why I'm sure. I know what darkness looks like. Thomas, I've lived in it. You brought me into the light. You gave me hope when I had none, strength when mine failed." She smiled. "Besides, who else would have me? A reformed seamstress from Philadelphia who can shoot a rifle and knows how to hide in the mountains. Any man with sense, Thomas said firmly. But I'm glad they don't have any because I'm not sharing. That evening, as they sat by the fire making wedding plans, Evelyn reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd left Philadelphia seeking a new life and found something far different than expected. Danger and despair. Yes, but also courage she never knew she possessed and a love worth fighting for. Spring wedding, Thomas suggested, when the wildflowers bloom. Perfect. Mrs. Patterson will make my dress. It's only fair, after all the sewing I've done for her. And Sam can stand up with me. Man deserves it after rallying the neighbors to save our hides. We'll invite your sister. I want to meet the woman who helped make you who you are. Thomas pulled her close. She'll love you. Probably lecture me about taking so long to propose properly. You proposed while men were shooting at us. I'd say that's memorable enough. Most women might prefer flowers and candlelight. I'm not most women. No, he agreed, and kissing her forehead. You're definitely not. Later. As Evelyn prepared for bed in what would soon be their shared room, she paused at the window. The moon was rising over the desert, painting everything in silver. Somewhere out there was the barn where Thomas had found her, the line shack where they'd hidden, the trails where they'd fled from danger. But that was the past. The future lay ahead, bright with promise. She'd been abandoned with nothing, left to die in the cold. Now she had a home, a purpose, and a man who'd given her shelter when no one else would. Sometimes, she thought, the darkest moments led to the brightest dawns. And her dawn was just beginning. The morning of the first day of spring dawned clear and bright, with wildflowers carpeting the meadows around the McGraw Ranch in purple, yellow, and white. Evelyn stood at her bedroom window, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. In just a few hours, she would walk down the makeshift aisle between the apple trees and become Mrs. Thomas McGraw. Stop fidgeting or I'll stick you with a pin. Mrs. Patterson scolded gently, adjusting the hem of the wedding dress. The older woman had outdone herself. The gown was simple but elegant, cream-colored silk with delicate embroidery that Evelyn had done herself during the winter months. I'm not fidgeting, Evelyn protested, then promptly proved herself wrong by shifting again. Sarah McGraw Daniels laughed from her seat by the mirror. Thomas's sister had arrived 2 days ago with her family, instantly embracing Evelyn like a long-lost sister. She's nervous, Mrs. Patterson. I was the same way when I married Robert. Nothing to be nervous about, Mrs. Patterson said, standing back to admire her work. Thomas McGraw's a good man, one of the best in the county. It's not Thomas I'm nervous about, Evelyn admitted. It's just, I never imagined this. A real wedding, a real home, a real future. Sarah rose and took Evelyn's hands. After everything Thomas told me you've been through, you deserve all of it and more. You saved my brother. You know, he saved me. No. Sarah's eyes, so like her brother's, were serious. He was turning into a hermit before you came, working himself to death, barely talking to anyone. You brought him back to life. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ladies, Sam Rodriguez called. The groom's getting mighty anxious out here. Says if you don't hurry up, he's coming in after his bride. Tell him patience is a virtue, Sarah called back, but she was smiling. Though that's never been Thomas's strong suit. They made final adjustments to Evelyn's hair, pinning early wildflowers into the simple style. When they finally emerged from the house, Evelyn gasped at the transformation of the ranch. Their neighbors had arrived early to help set up. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributions. Ribbons fluttered from the apple trees, and a fiddler was already warming up. It seemed half the county had come to celebrate, but Evelyn had eyes only for Thomas, standing tall and slightly uncomfortable in his best suit at the end of the flower-strewn path. When he saw her, his face transformed with a smile that made her heart skip. The ceremony was simple, performed by the circuit preacher who'd ridden out specially for the occasion. When Thomas took her hands, Evelyn felt the calluses from years of hard work, the strength that had protected her, the gentleness that had healed her. "Evelyn Carter," he said when it came time for vows, "you stumbled into my life on the coldest night of winter and brought spring with you. I promise to shelter you always, to stand beside you in whatever comes, and to love you until my last breath." Evelyn had to blink back tears before she could respond. "Thomas McGraw, you gave me hope when I had none, courage when mine failed, and a home when the world had cast me out. I promise to build a life with you, to face whatever storms may come, and to love you beyond my final day." When the preacher pronounced them married and Thomas kissed her, the crowd erupted in cheers. Blue barked excitedly, running circles around them as they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Evelyn had experienced. These people who had once whispered about her now embraced her fully. Women who'd been cold now pressed her hands warmly, welcoming her truly into their community. Men who'd been suspicious now clapped Thomas on the back, congratulating him on his good fortune. "I owe you an apology," one woman said quietly, Mrs. Jenkins, who'd been particularly harsh in her judgment. "I believed gossip instead of waiting for truth. You're a brave woman, Mrs. McGraw." The title still felt new, wonderful. Mrs. McGraw, not the desperate woman from the barn, not the runaway, not the victim. A rancher's wife with a place and purpose. As afternoon faded to evening, lanterns were lit and dancing began. Thomas led Evelyn in a waltz, moving with surprising grace for a man more comfortable on horseback than a dance floor. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked, impressed. "Sarah taught me. Said no sister of hers would have a brother who couldn't properly court a lady." He spun her carefully. "No, of course, that was years ago. Didn't think I'd ever need the lessons." "I'm glad you learned." "So am I." He pulled her closer. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something." A flutter of worry touched her. "What?" "I've been working on something. A surprise. But Sam can't keep a secret, so you'll hear about it soon enough." He gestured toward the hill behind the house. "I'm building us a new home up there. Bigger, with proper rooms for children and a sewing room just for you. This cabin will become the foreman's house when Sam gets married." "Thomas, you don't need to." "I want to. You deserve better than a bachelor's cabin, so you deserve a real home." "I have a real home," she said firmly. "Wherever you are is home." He kissed her then, right there among the dancers, earning good-natured whistles and applause from their guests. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, each one pressed Evelyn's hand and welcomed her again to the community. Marshall Turner, who'd made the trip from Carson City, pulled Thomas aside for a word. "Wanted you to know," the marshal said quietly. "Dempsey tried to escape last week, didn't get far. He's been moved to a more secure facility. He won't be troubling anyone for a very long time." Evelyn, overhearing, felt the last shadow of fear dissolve. That chapter was truly closed. Later, as the last guests departed and quiet settled over the ranch, Thomas and Evelyn sat on the porch watching stars appear in the darkening sky, still in her wedding dress. She leaned against his shoulder, perfectly content. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "How could I regret the path that led me to you?" She traced patterns on his hand. "I won't lie and say I'm grateful for what happened, but I'm grateful for where it led, "I'm my brave wife," he murmured against her hair. "Your wife," she repeated, savoring the words. "I like the sound of that." Blue padded over, settling at their feet with a contented sigh. In the distance, an owl called, and the stream gurgled its eternal song. The ranch that had been a refuge was now truly home. "I was thinking," Evelyn said, "about what you said about children." Thomas's arm tightened around her. "Yes? I'd like that. Children who'll run through these fields, learn to ride before they can properly walk, grow up knowing they're loved and wanted." She smiled. "Little boys with your stubbornness and little girls with your kind heart. Or little girls with your courage and little boys with your spirit. Either way, they'll be ours." "Ours," Thomas agreed. "I like the sound of that too." As the moon rose over their mountains, Evelyn reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd been abandoned without clothes in a barn, left to die in the frozen darkness. But that desperate night had led to this, a husband who cherished her, a community that accepted her, a future bright with possibility. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For finding me, for seeing past the circumstances to who I could be, for giving me shelter when no one else would." Thomas turned her to face him, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "Evelyn McGraw, you've got it backwards. You're the one who saved me. From loneliness, from becoming just another bitter hermit in the mountains. You brought life back to this place. We saved each other then." "I reckon we did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring the start of their married life, work and challenges, joys and sorrows, all the complex realities of building a future together. But tonight, they were simply two souls who'd found each other against all odds. Sitting on a porch in the Nevada mountains. Proof that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest endings. "Hey, come on, Mrs. McGraw," Thomas said finally, standing and offering his hand. "Time to start our life together." Evelyn took his hand, rising with a smile. "It already started," she said. "That night in the barn when you offered me your coat. Everything since has just been the story unfolding." As they went inside their home, their true home, the door closed on the past and opened to a future neither could have imagined on that desperate winter night. But the best stories, Evelyn had learned, were the ones you never saw coming. The stars continued their eternal dance overhead, blessing the small ranch where love had conquered fear. Hope had defeated despair, and a woman who'd lost everything had found more than she ever dreamed possible.